I'd like to set the scene this afternoon by asking a few general questions. The first one is, at the conference today, how many of you guys have actually checked your emails? Just by a show of hands. Okay. How about your finances? Using cell phone banking, SMSs, internet banking. Now, the key question, how many of you actually know what your electricity consumption at home or even of your organization was for last month? Okay. I see considerably fewer hands than for the first two questions. And I congratulate you guys who put your hands up on your heightened awareness and good behavior. For the rest of you, don't feel too bad because you're in good company. And as I think we are all guilty of unthinking behavior when it comes to energy. The mere fact that we leave devices on in our homes in standby mode, not realizing how much vampire power actually consumes, because it's actually up to 20 or 30% of your annual electricity bill. A PlayStation 4, for example, consumes 15 watts of power in standby mode, which is 10% of the power it uses during gaming. So once you add up all those figures, it starts to make sense and you see what the effect is on an annual basis. We as human beings and creatures of habit are very guilty of not thinking about our actions when it comes to energy. Potentially everyone is an energy manager because we are all able to influence how much or how little energy we use in and around our homes and our places of work. So why is it that we behave the way we do? I think the key takeout point that I would like for you to grab from this presentation this afternoon is how to harness the power of behavioral science and transformation in order to get the full benefit of the people aspect of ISO 50001, the energy management standard. The first part of my presentation, I would like to provide a background on the link between the energy management system standard ISO 50001, the people aspect, and a little bit of theory into behavioral science. The second part will focus on some of the quantitative stuff and the numbers, the behavior-related savings that we've seen through the companies that have been involved in the IE project. So, a quick definition. Human behavior can be defined as the range of actions or mannerisms that are exhibited by humans, basically in conjunction and in response to various stimuli within the internal and external environments. When this behavior changes, it's said to be a behavior change. So any transformation or modification from the regular norm would result in a behavior change. To date, the main tools that have been applied in energy efficiency improvement projects have been of a technological and economic nature. And people don't regularly assume that behavior change can be a powerful tool in being able to unlock the full potential of energy efficiency opportunities and energy management in companies. Everything always comes back to behavior. So I'm sure most of you know, no matter how energy efficient a lighting technology may be, it is ultimately people that are responsible for going out, procuring the correct light bulb, installing it, and actually using it in the correct manner before the benefits can be realized. It is this human dimension and the associated ability to modify and transform human behavior that underpins the people aspect of ISO 50001. I'd like to do a quick refresher, and for those that are new to the energy management standard, the International Energy Management Standard ISO 50001, just highlight some of the key points and what the framework allows companies and organizations to put in place and to do. So the standard was launched in June of 2011, and it basically allows organizations to establish the processes and systems in order to develop a policy for the more efficient use of energy and commit to the continual improvement of energy usage. They are also able to interrogate data, so that's past and present energy data, more effectively, which then helps them to look at consumption patterns and be able to look at the trends, to look at future energy usage and make predictions with higher levels of confidence, and to take the longer-term strategic sort of decisions in the organization when it comes to energy usage. It enables organizations to fix targets and objectives in order to meet the policy and document the action plans that will actually get them to achieving those objectives. They are able to measure and track energy performance using a number of tools. And it enables a consistent review of the system. So management can constantly go back to the system to see how well the policy is working, how well everything pertaining to the energy management system has been set up and how it's functioning. And finally, the most important thing is that it allows organizations through a very systematic, structured process to continually improve energy management and performance, which is something that every organization strives for in this day and age. Okay, it can be argued by lots of people, and surely a lot of people in this room who are familiar with the standard, that every clause in ISO 50001 has to do with people. People are ultimately responsible for reading the standard, they're responsible for implementing the standard, and they are responsible for maintaining the energy management standard in order to comply with ISO 50001 and be recertified again and again. However, there are 4 specific clauses that focus and place specific focus particularly on people. And I've just highlighted some of those, or all of those clauses there. So clause 4.2.1 relates specifically to top management, and it highlights top management's role in committing to achieving the objectives of the energy policy and the energy management system. Because if we have to be really honest, the buck stops with top management in every organization, and they are answerable and accountable for absolutely everything that has to do with energy costing. Clause 4.2.2 represents the role of the management representative, which is a function that has to be formally appointed by top management. And this is a person with the relevant competence, skills, and authority that is able to carry the message between the lower levels of the organization and what's necessary for implementing the energy management standard through to the representatives in management and top management. The competence, training, and awareness clause is basically instated to ensure that any person that's acting for the organization or on its behalf, including contractors, are properly skilled and aware of what the company is committing to in terms of the energy management standard. The company is also required to identify training needs within the organization that relate to the specific use of the significant use of energy. And they commit to training those people and making them more aware of their specific impact of energy within their job functions. And lastly, clause 4.5.3 deals with the communication aspect. So it forces companies to ensure that there's constant internal communication when it comes to what's being done in the company with regards to energy performance improvements. And this doesn't only relate to the energy policy and instating an energy management system. When there are improvements made, these need to be individually communicated so that people understand the individual effects on their departments as well. So we've established that people are a critical part of building and sustaining a successful energy management system. It's easy to understand that if we can change people's behaviors to become more aware, we can make them more mindful and aware of what their actions have on energy efficiency improvements and energy performance within an organization. Eventually, habits will start to become more automatic and good practice will start to become routine within the organization. And I think what we're all looking for is sustained behavior that leads to energy management eventually becoming a part of the company culture. For those of you that are unaware, several studies that have been conducted have actually realized that successful behavioral change in an organization can contribute as much as 20% in energy savings. This is known as the Transtheoretical Model or the change model, and it basically consists of 5 stages. So initially, when we start out in an energy efficiency journey, there are many people within the organization who are at the first stage. They're completely unaware of the negative consequences that their actions have on energy consumption, and it's known as the pre-contemplation stage. So in order to get from pre-contemplation, where there's no foreseeable sort of initiatives for the future on energy improvement, we need to get to contemplation. And we need to create an awareness within the organization. Once they become aware of the problem and what the impact is on energy, we can then move into the preparation phase where more persuasion and motivation will result in them taking the desired actions. They start to practice the desired behavior, and this is obviously fueled by more education and more skills development within their specific area of energy usage. And the top stair is where every organization wants to be. So we want to be able to maintain and sustain what behavior changes have been made. And this is only possible through integrating those changes into your organization. So whether that means putting it into a standard operating manual so that when new people come into the organization, they're able to see what needs to be done in an energy efficient way, or whether it becomes a part of your induction program. That decision lies entirely with the organization, but it's so essential that it becomes a sustainable, a part of the energy management strategy to be sustainable. The way in which organizations move through the energy efficiency ladder is also largely influenced by people. Once again, the foundation is based on raising awareness and attention to what needs to happen to save energy and to be more energy aware within the organization. This then increases the thirst for knowledge. And this thus can only be satisfied by, for example, conducting an energy audit and analyzing what the opportunities are for energy management and energy efficiency within the organization. It starts to change attitudes. And people start to investigate these opportunities and look for improvements. However, there needs to be a structure in place. So whether the organization chooses to have an energy management system or lean manufacturing for companies that are involved in lean manufacturing and world-class manufacturing, it needs to be a sustainable and systematic structure that will allow them to keep the improvements going. Eventually, these behavior changes fueled by more knowledge and an improved attitude, start to become integrated into the business. And once again, the top stair is where every company wants to be. where we have sustained behavior that's become part of company culture. So we go from a situation where energy efficiency was a non-priority through to where it's come to the attention of management and people have been accordingly skilled, through to it becoming a strategic issue and being linked with the future objectives of the organization. Okay, one of the key characteristics of human behavior is our inherent ability to keep questioning things consistently. And this is a trait that needs to be explored to its full potential in order to achieve the objectives of energy efficiency and energy management. So the pictorial basically shows a monitoring device and the graphics from a monitoring device. And it will enable people to start asking questions like, why is there a spike in energy usage at a certain time? Or what's using all of the energy when there's no production on weekends? Or whether equipment is being left on overnight. And what I'd like to highlight here is that monitoring devices are all well and good, but it's really people that are significant for questioning or are needed for questioning and investigating significant deviations that occur and putting in place action plans to fix those significant deviations. Okay, benefits of behavioral changes in energy management systems and energy efficiency can be and almost always are immediate because there's generally very little infrastructure changes that are required, and the cost or the investment cost that's required is mostly associated with upskilling people within your organization, which has a number of benefits. The savings are sustainable because you've actually put in place a system that's going to be able to maintain and sustain those savings with the correct people in charge. And this gentleman in front here asked a question earlier about how does it make a difference to homes. Whatever people tend to learn at the workplace, they take home. And I think for lots of people, it's quite significant that they're able to save electricity costs at home rather than just the organization that they work for start saving all of the energy consumption related costs. Okay, I think I'm running out of time, so I'm going to maybe just speed it up a bit. The German Development Institute recently conducted a large research study in association with the United Nations Industrial Development Organization and the IEE project. This study was based on investigating what the behavioral barriers were in emerging and developing economies. The behavioral barriers to energy efficiency uptake in emerging and developing economies. And I've summarized some of the key points that came out of that study. ArcelorMittal, which was an ENMS pilot plant in 2011, and you would have heard Renette van Zyl this morning on the panel discussion, was involved in the study, and basically they were showcased as the success story of South Africa. So the first barrier is basically related to when people stick to a default position or a predominant norm. People tend to be, as I said earlier, creatures of habit, and they don't like to move out of their comfort zones. So that's the first and probably the biggest potential barrier when it comes to behavioral change. There tends to be a status quo bias, so they're so used to the current default position of however they do things that it becomes almost unthinking to do it a different way. ArcelorMittal said that attempting to change the status quo involved challenging and questioning everything. It required examining production processes at a micro level to identify opportunities for energy saving. This resulted in a realized saving of 1.1 million rand simply by switching off an unused 250 kilowatt pump and optimizing the flow and pressure of the 3 remaining pumps for the application. The third potential barrier is related to the perceived cost of change. So people, they will often think that it is one additional thing for them to do in the day, like switching off a machine during a lunch break, and that's the perceived cost of change to the organization, or to themselves rather. The lack of awareness and training is one of the constraints that exists in almost every organization who starts out on the energy efficiency journey, and we've seen that in the IE project. People need to be adequately trained and empowered with the right information to spark a change in behaviors. And the last one is quite an interesting concept. It's known as tunneling, which means to focus single-mindedly on managing only one issue at a time and believing that there aren't enough resources to address any of the other issues. This leads to neglecting other and possibly more important things that will possibly provide higher returns in the long term, such as energy. So some typical behaviors into energy and energy efficiency: leaving lights and air conditioners equipment on. The picture that you see is of a pilot plant. It was taken in the Western Cape during one of our ENMS training courses that was run. And you'll see that the company has obviously gone to the extent of putting in spikes on the wall to prevent seagulls from soiling the wall. But during daylight hours, that energy efficient light is left on, which totally defeats the purpose of installing an energy efficient light. So while we're all able to identify something like that when we walk past, how many people actually do something about it? Cleaning off dust with compressed air is quite a popular misuse of energy in industry as well. Okay, so the wheel basically shows what can be done to change energy management behavior in organizations. And we need to start with identifying the problem areas related to high energy usage and raising awareness of the influence that people have on this usage. A simple energy efficiency or energy management awareness campaign will work in this instance to achieve this, and the impact, and provide details on the impact that it can have on energy management. We need to start training personnel and aligning employees with the energy efficiency objectives of the organization, and start to motivate and encourage small changes, no matter how small they are. If they have to do with energy efficiency improvements, we need to motivate that within employees. And finally, come up with strategies that address the potential barriers within organizations. So the first way we need to do that is to filter down the message of wasted energy and start to translate that into tangible numbers that people understand in organizations. You need to paint an honest picture with regards to security, supply, cost of electricity, and the worst case scenario being, in the case of smaller companies, actually losing people and jobs within the company once costs become too high. And be honest when you are addressing yourselves as management, or when management addresses these questions. So does the organization stress the importance of being energy efficient? Does everyone understand what it means and what the outcomes are going to be if they are not energy efficient? Are ideas and inputs, are there suggestion schemes in place, and when people provide those suggestions, are those taken seriously? Are they acknowledged and rewarded? And how many people actually believe within the company that energy is a fixed cost? Okay, I'm going to be quick through these slides because I'm running out of time. These are some numbers related to some of the companies that have participated in the IEE project over the years. And basically, it shows the changes or the behavioral change savings that have been implemented at these companies. So AtSource Foods is a fruit drying company based in the Western Cape, and they managed to save 113,000 Rand just by training staff to maximize the number of drying pans per session within a tunnel drying operation. Kraft Foods, based in PE, managed to save 223,000 Rand just by switching off idle machines, and that savings, idle machines over shutdown. And that savings, those savings are annualized. So every year, year on year, they are there, they're sustained. And if the energy costs increase, then that will obviously have an effect on the savings as well. Feltex Automotive Trim is a company in Durban that's as a supplier to many larger automotive companies. And they managed to save 135,000 kilowatt hours. They were an ENMS candidate plant. They implemented an energy management system. And one of the identified opportunities was there was a lot of unused equipment that could be switched off. I've already mentioned ArcelorMittal. Just to give you an idea of the behavioral savings that were captured during that energy management systems implementation project, they were in the region of 13 million Rand. Also, just by switching off unused equipment during periods of non-production. My colleague Hemant has already spoken about Johnson Matthey, who was one of the companies, South African companies that were ISO 50001 certified. And the interesting thing on this slide for me is the behavioral change, which he also touched on. So you'll see that it's actually the biggest component of savings here. And I've just included what they said about the lessons learned on behavioral changes. So they said it was imperative to include awareness campaigns to ensure that significant energy users understand the impact of their work and actions. These are some other companies that bear testimony to the behavioral savings that are possible, or the savings that are possible just by changing behaviors. I've included two inserts from publications here that basically summarized it very well on why people need to be at the center of the energy strategy within organizations. Okay, and that's just some humor. I'd like to leave you with a Native American proverb which will challenge the way you think about your behavior when it comes to energy. Thank you.